in Blender, I think it's not really a feature, it's already in there, but there's a strange limitation, and I think that was done because of slow graphics cards, and to describe what I wish to have. I show you the output, and after that, yeah, well, you see. Yeah, that's it. It was not painted by me, but a friend of mine, and I did the compositing with somebody else. And we used it, as you see, for a 2D animation. And we were suffering from something with the alpha textures in the viewport. It seems that well, you see there are many planes with alpha textures on it, and somehow Blender manages the order I add those planes when difficult to explain. Perhaps you notice what's happening. There are planes in it, and
I know what's happening.
What?
And the problem is that the drawing code likes to draw the selection last. That's the first problem. Because if you select things, you want to be able to see it. And sometimes, even when there's stuff behind something else, for example in wireframe, you want to be able to see it.
Yes.
If you draw everything in a fixed order, you might be able never to select or to see anything. That's problem number one. The second is to be able to see transparency with alpha in a nice way. You have to sort all the objects per frame from back to front and draw it from back to front. Then it will look good. That's simple code. It's not too complicated to do, but that's a 1 or 2 days development time of somebody here. You know?
Yeah,
who's
please.
going to do that? Yeah. Oh, he's going to do it.
Enable alpha test. One line of code. That will go away. Alpha test. Because if you set an alpha test, you can set a value, and any alpha value that's higher than that will not draw into this Z buffer. And that means that anything that's 100% transparent won't be set in the Z buffer, and you'll see what's behind it.
That's another problem. We already do that. The problem is that you have to draw in the right order also.
No. If you Z test, you don't. Then you only have to do it when it's semi-transparent, but full transparency, you don't. It's, yeah. So essentially, the hardware works like this, is that you have a blend mode that when you draw something, when you draw a pixel, you can say, I want to blend this according to some rule. So you can do it additive, and you can do things like that. So what you do when you draw a pixel is that you have a little test that says, should I draw this pixel? And that pixel test looks at the Z buffer and says, how far is into this pixel am I drawing? And is something already there? And if something is in front of that pixel, well, this is behind something, so I don't need to draw this. I shouldn't draw this, right? The problem is, if you're drawing something transparent, and you draw a transparent window, and then you draw something behind that window, that's not going to be drawn because the Z buffer of the first window you draw is going to tell all the pixels coming after that, no, you shouldn't draw the things behind this because there's something in front of it. So that means if you want to draw what's inside of the window, you have to draw that first and then draw the transparent thing on top of that in order to get transparency. So C sorting is important when you do transparency. But there is a clever trick, which is if you don't want transparency, but you want to have something like this where you just want to have an outline, where just some pixels shouldn't draw at all. So then you set the blending mode to overwrite. And then you have a special call that is a alpha test. And then you use the alpha channel to say, should I draw or not? And if it doesn't draw into the Z buffer either. And that means you don't have to do Z buffer, you don't have to do the sorting. And that's a really smart trick for that kind of thing.
But that's not OpenCL 1.2. That's a later command. Yeah, it's an old command. Yeah, I've never seen it working. Okay, good. Yeah, immediately we want to have it. So who's going to add that one line of code? Do people see it online? Yeah, no, that's probably too much.
That would really be great because it would be great to do 2D animation.
Our current OpenCL state didn't allow this, but there seems to be a trick to do this. So
yes,
great.
Somebody can do this.
Monday on Monday or Tuesday. Is that okay?
Well, yeah,
no?
that's
no. Okay.
Well. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You can have another free request if you want to. Maybe you have.
Well, okay. If you ask, let's on Friday we had this user interface discussion with the difference between errors and oversights. I think there was. He said there's many errors occur not because of they are errors, because you oversee what you're doing. And when I, for example, the merge operation, this is something I would. It distresses me that always there's this button to remove 3 vertices, okay or not okay, and I always...
It's a horrible menu. I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
We need some way to mesh, we need some kind of built-in console or something for a log, that you can see in the past what kind of things happened. Then it should have a kind of an internal log file with events and results and errors and notices. Because sometimes what you need is a confirmation that something happened.
Yeah.
And typically, if you remove double vertices, they are on the same location. So if you press the remove doubles, you don't see anything happening.
That would
also
that menu
be bad. It tells you, oh, the operation was successful, something happened.
But perhaps just not directly under the mouse, but beside. And
yeah,
just
it should not be there.
Yeah. Okay.
Skill. Jeffrey?
I've seen him. No, that's not Jeffrey. Where's Jeffrey?
André? Lucia?
For people who not only work directly with Blender. I'm working with Blender since many years, but I'm using also other programs and combine it. And this is a project I've realized for a company, and it's a combination with Blender and Flash. And it's a 3D environment. You can use this telephone to operate this or to operate some functionality in the house. So you can bring up the rollos here, and you can start the water, I guess. But my problem is that Flash can't work with a real 3D environment. And 2 weeks ago, I was at the Flash Forum conference in Cologne, and there was a guy. He talks about a new technique. It's named Paper Vision 3D, and this Paper Vision 3D works with Collada. And then he says it was a great thing to implement 3D in Flash. And he tried this. Is here no web? Oh, I hope. Oh, okay, we can look at this here. And he tried many 3D programs, 3D Studio Max and Cinema 4D and so on. But the best export of Collada with the mesh and the texture was out of Blender. And it's a great thing because you have the possibility to use the Flash environment to show 3D content in the web. And you can use Blender to do this. And there are some kind of examples here on the Paper Vision 3D website. You can see here this is 3D in Flash and in real time. It is not rendered frame by frame. It is really in real time. And the way to do this is very easy. I have here 2 ways you can work with it. The first way is very difficult. You had to build up the 3D environment by code. It is not really easy to do this. You can see here this lines of code. You have 100 lines of code, but the result of it was only that you have. Let me show it. This one here. You have our cover from the booklet from today, and you can turn it around in 3D space. But it's the 100 lines code for only planes. So also when you are very good in coding, you don't want to build up a whole 3D environment with code. So you have the possibility to do it out of Blender, and that's very interesting. You've seen here, this is in Flash inside, and when I start up this scene, you have a 3D sphere, and that's only exported out of Blender and directly loaded into Flash, into real time. You can turn it around. It's not frame by frame animation. And so you have a great possibility to export out of Blender. Let me start the Blender file. This is the Blender file. You can use any environment in Blender, and here's the sphere you have seen in Flash before, and when I hide it, there is Susan, and the only thing you have to do is to UV map it, because this Paper Vision 3D uses the UV environment maps to build up the texture on the surface. And then you only have to export it in Collada 1.4. Oh, sorry, that was the import. Yes, export Collada 1.4, and you only have to export the selection and the UV image. Yes, and export and close. Export successfully. And then we can look in Flash. And there's our Susan. And so you have the chance to build up whole 3D environments for the web. And I think when you think of the penetration of Flash with 98%, I think, or 99%, it could be a chance for Blender to be a good environment to build up 3D content for the web through this Collada export. And when you think of that 3D Studio Max and Cinema 4D don't export as good Collada code as Blender does, it was the first time that at a Flash Forum, Adobe Flash Forum conference, the guys say there, oh, Blender, oh, that's good, I want to have it. And I think that can be a chance for Blender also in web content. Okay.
You heard of PDF 3D?
Yes.
I once had a printer driver where you can check the box, print in 3D, and then you open it in PDF 7.0 or above, Adobe Reader, and then you get a 3D PDF.
Yes. I think Adobe have, with the new programs, Photoshop, Adobe PDF, and Acrobat, and also with Flash, you have also the chance to export out of Blender with 3ds. I've tried it with my colleague. He's working in print, in print section, and he opens my Photoshop file with a Blender 3D object, and he can turn it around, and he can texture it, and he can build up lightning and so on. And but this doesn't work with Collada. You had to use the 3ds exporter. And when you want to use the texture in Photoshop, my screen here is away. Oh yes, here. I can show it here. We can take Susan and export it in 3ds file. So and then we can use Photoshop or Acrobat. It works with both or with all Adobe programs. And when you have it in Photoshop, you only have to double click on the layer, and then you can turn it around here. So, and when you leave the 3D layer, you can also do lightning here directly in Photoshop. And when you leave the layer, you must apply these changings, and it will be rendered in the pixel layer. But the 3D object is still available in the Photoshop file, and also in Acrobat and so on. And so you have directly the possibility to export content out of Blender in Adobe Photoshop, Acrobat, and so on. The content, the 3D content, is still in the files.
Area is animation and character rigging, right? So I want to talk about for me, the best thing on Maya when you are rigging or animating, right? So a few things, right? One of them is everything is animable, right? Every param, every number usually is animable, right? And the other thing is the channel box, right? We have copy work right now. Oh, one moment. My pen. Okay. Files. Copy work, right. The channel box is a really useful tool for animator and rigger, right? Rigger is the correct word? The person that rigger, right? Channel box is this part of the interface. And when you press any control object of your character, you have in one view the channels, right? The channels of your animation object. This is the standard object, the standard channels, like translate, rotate, everything, you know, okay? It's normal, easy, right? But the good thing here is that you can create your custom channels, right? Your custom channel, like a pivot, okay, or let me everything set to 0. Okay, here, and you have the control, right? Pivot or 2-way. Whoop, 0. Here, okay. In fact, only you need one control in viewport, right? Only one control in viewport, and you can set all these channels like a rotation, EK, FK, everything, this kind of thing, in the channel box. Another thing here is that you can, like a rigger, you can control that information for the animation, for animator. For example, in these channels, you can lock, okay, or hide. Okay, for example, I don't want that the animator change the scale values. O sea, like hide. Here. Okay. Or this all parameters. Okay. And in this same channel box, you can create the connection. Okay, the connection with everything. Everything channels animable in Maya. You can set a connection editor, right? So create left this param, okay, and now you can pivot with another param or whatever, okay. That's it. Any question? Okay. Yeah, this is the point. It is a choice for a rigger. You can set a lot of controls in viewport if you want, but you can concentrate. Okay. You can concentrate a list of channels in only one object with the channel box, right? And you don't make a lot of viewport controls to make little things, okay? And the good thing here is when you in the IPO driver of curve editor, right? When you select one object, you can get the all information. Okay, you don't have select a lot of objects to see the all controls of a leg, right? Okay, so that's it.
And then you run the move command. So you would, this is from what I gather, that's how it works. Whereas with Blender, you would say something along the lines of, for vertices, my mesh is verts, move my vertices this much. And it just, you don't deal with the context of the view, you just deal on the data how you want to deal with it. But it means it doesn't work so well as a macro system. So it doesn't, you couldn't do what you want to do with the current Python API very easily.
Yeah, I agree with Antip, but it's not easy. So it has to be done by Torn, perhaps, or it needs. Yeah, well, as I understand, it needs. Well, basically, it needs. Changes in the code to because basically how the functionality in Blender is defined in hard-coded C functions, there's no way to get information out what was done. So for some operations, if the user interface was defined in another way, you could track it sort of from there, but that wouldn't solve it correctly. So. But I guess that's another thing to keep in mind when doing the mythical event refactor. But so that might solve it. But yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, it's we all want it, but it's not easy.
Hello. Oh. Okay. So most of my suggestions are actually related more to games, so maybe not appropriate for all of you, but. I think the number one most important is that on Linux, there is no normal map baking tools to go from high to low polygon. Please, we really need this. And the one in Blender, it only does tangent space, which isn't very useful. But, the other one is, because it's low polygon, always manipulating a lot of polygons on the micro scale. So I think when you're editing meshes in general, the tools you use the most is probably like knife cut, merge, and face tool. And like in Max, when you wanna cut an edge, it's just a tool, add vertex. You just click on the edges. You don't need to highlight the edges and then do like Shift K, Enter, click, 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 Enter. It's just like click, 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 and it splits it. So that would be useful. And if all these shortcuts were together in the same place, like the merge, the cut, and the face tool. Fix the UV painting, because with diffuse maps, a lot of the time painting a lot of shadow information onto it manually, and so that's very useful because you're not modeling a lot of detail, you're painting a lot of it, and painting shadow. So it's really nice to be able to see in the viewpoint exactly where you paint. That's features needed. Another one is in Verse, you have the code, and Verse gets updates from Blender when the mesh is edited. There's no external way to do that via plugins. Maybe it's an idea to take the Verse stuff out and have some way of registering your own subscribers to changes, and then like Verse could be a plugin, and you can also make your own plugin for subscribing to geometry, like if you had a 3D viewport that you want to update in Blender. Custom Blender windows would be useful, and custom empty draw types. Also, when you're working in Blender, Blender's orientated towards offline rendering, so we have all this like stuff here that's not really useful, and it'd be nice if there was some way to like, maybe if Blender was just like a a bunch of libraries and you had your own custom profile that was just implementing this GUI on top or something, and you could say, oh, I don't need this panel here or this or this or this. You could just put what you want. I don't know, profiles, because this kludge wastes brain cycles. Another one is double-sided billboards. If I'm making a quad on someone, normally what I have to do is I have to paint the quad and then once I've finished, and I know I'm not going to be manipulating the vertices, I have to take the quad, I have to duplicate it and then flip it, because there's no way to do selective double-sided faces, because, you know, like I want a piece of cloth on the character, so it's got to be seen from both sides, and it's just a plane. Also, for things like hair, the alpha in Blender is not so good. You maybe detect when I'm using alpha and do good back-to-front sorting of the faces or something like this, so that if I'm painting the hair of a character, I can see it in Blender and I don't have to keep exporting and seeing how it looks. What's that about? Why doesn't that go vertical when I click vertical? It's a bit odd. I think maybe this would be nice if it went up there. Also, when Blender has these really nice features for linking in library objects. It's very useful, because if you have people who are making assets and then people who are doing level design, you can take the assets in and you can composite the level. But on large levels, I've had levels that are like taking up 12 gigabytes of memory, and like my computer stops, because I think the textures, it doesn't realize that there's a texture being used in this file and this file, and
isn't one solution to that to have the textures in one file, have a texture library blend? Because well, that's what works currently, but I don't know if another solution can be devised. That would need a change to the ID system, because currently in Blender the ID of an object is the name of the blend file, and then the type of the object, and then the name of the object. So it doesn't know that a texture in many different blends is the same texture, because it has a different ID, because it's in a different file. So
can you just detect the file type or something, some workaround? It'd be nice.
Perhaps there might be some, yeah, I don't know.